Mabuhay Manila, this is Aishadel from ManilaShaker.com. The Realme 7i is now officially in the Philippines. It is powered with Snapdragon 662. This chipset has 11nm process technology, and since it has a Snapdragon chipset, most developers optimize games for Snapdragon processors more often. So, is the performance and gaming of Realme 7i good? Let's find out on our gaming review of the Realme 7i. Quick specs before we get to the gaming test. As we said earlier, it is powered with Snapdragon 662 11nm process with Adreno 610 on the GPU that has 650MHz on the GPU clock speed. Our unit comes with 8GB of RAM and 128GB of internal storage, good for storing lots of games. The display has a 90Hz capability. Also, it only has a 720p display and a 6.5-inch IPS LCD screen. The screen is a bit unimpressive in papers, but it will process fewer pixels compared to the 1080p, which means that our CPU will not deal with it drastically, but let's see. The battery is back with a 5000mAh cell and an 18W fast charging capability. Now let's start with 100% battery and enable the performance mode, then optimize the game on game space with a competitive mode on. And let's run some benchmarks first. This is the first battery result after benchmarking some apps. 5% was reduced after 30 minutes of benchmarking. We have a pretty good start here. Now, the first game is Pubg Mobile. This game is still a highly demanded game, and upon heading to the settings, we are in smooth plus medium frame rate, and we have max settings of balance plus medium. Let's test first smooth plus high, since high is equal to 30 FPS. So far, we landed smoothly with no stuttering upon landing the game's graphics, and at this rate, we are stable even when fighting and panning the camera elsewhere. We got 30 FPS with 99% stability. This means it is playable and stable with no hiccups. Now bumping up to the balance plus medium frames, the frames should be 25 FPS since we are in medium settings. And we recorded 25 FPS with 98% stability, still no noticeable frame drops upon playing the game 3 times. Now to further test the capability, we will bump the settings on the GFX tool. Again, disclaimer, we don't recommend to try this app because it is modifying the game's config file. But for the sake of our test, we will show you how it performs at max unlock settings. Now playing the game with Ultra HD plus 60 FPS, the game only peaks at 50 FPS, which is pretty acceptable, though stuttering increases, and we recorded 48 FPS in average with 94% stability. This is because we are using the 99% of our GPU, and we are forcing the hardware to run this game, and this will result on increased temperature, resulting in frame drops. We don't recommend playing with these settings, but as you can see, we are stable as we are playing the game smoothly, but not in a constant performance. After trying the GFX tool, the temperature rises to 68 degrees Celsius. This is still pretty warm, but not to the point of overheating the panel. Playing this game in Ultra HD settings is just fine, but not recommendable. Next game, Call of Duty Mobile. Graphics quality is in medium plus medium frames, which is 25 FPS, but we will test it using high frames, and that will be 30 FPS. And playing the game using this setting is stable and stutter free. It's enjoyable, no sudden frame drops occurred. After some rounds, we bumped the settings to max plus high settings and turned on all other additional effects, and the game is still stable with no hiccups. Unfortunately, we experienced a drastic frame drop. This means 2 or more seconds of frame drops. It also means that if we are playing with 30 FPS, it will be reduced to 20 FPS below in a matter of seconds. And this happens if we are using sniper and scoping enemies. So the best recommended settings for stable gameplay will be medium or high and effects turned off. So update on our battery, 1 hour and 12 minutes of screen time, and we consume just 15% of its juice, which is a nice result. This is already an impressive result on its battery performance. Now moving on, let's play some RTS games. Starting with Mobile Legends, recommended settings are in medium with no HFR mode toggle. This means we can only experience 30 FPS, and upon playing the game with these settings, the game is pretty stable with no lags and frame drops, a constant 30 FPS with 100% stability. This is a great result, and this means we have no problem playing the game. Next, we bump it up to high but still in 30 FPS mode. Still, we didn't encounter frame drops, and the average frame though reduced a little. We recorded 29 FPS average with 100% stability. We hope that in the coming weeks, they will update the in-game settings for ML so we can play with HFR or 60 FPS mode, because the GPU is just fine, the game doesn't force our device, and the CPU temp is just 58 degrees Celsius. This means that it will be playable at 60 FPS. Next is League of Legends Wildrift. As you can see here, we are already in max settings. This is because we are testing the game off cam, and we can say that the game is so smooth at max settings, still with stable 60 FPS and 99% stability. So why is this game not 100% stable? Well, the game is still a new game. There are drastic frame drops happening in every phone we tested, including this Realme 7i, and that should be the game's problem, because even on high mid-range phones, we experience that kind of behavior. But the good thing is, even if it is a new game, it is playable. This device has no problem running Wildrift even at max settings. The only problem is I can't get a single kill. The CPU temperature is just 54 degrees Celsius, still cool in the panel temp. Now let's try some MiHoYo games. The first game is Genshin Impact. If some of you don't know, this game is new. It is circulating in social media, and this game got heavy but stunning graphics. This could be a perfect benchmarking game, but unfortunately, the game is somehow unoptimized in major phones. The game is not stable yet. It means that we can't rely on this game right now, although just to see the performance, even if the game is unoptimized, or just to see if the device can handle this game, we tried it, so we can assume that when it is fully optimized, the phone can easily handle this game. So the result, first we are in recommended lowest possible settings with motion blur turned on, and we still get some stuttering upon roaming the map. We got 29 FPS with 95% stability. This means that we can experience 5% stuttering in every 30 minutes of gameplay, which is somehow acceptable, and as we said, this game isn't fully optimized yet. We tried to bump the settings to the max available settings, and we get a 15 FPS in average, which is not recommendable. It is not playable at 15 FPS. As you can see, the graphics are tearing. So we tried other combined settings. We tried bumping up the render resolution to high to compensate the lowest graphics, but still sharp, though we can only play the game in 24 FPS, which is good, but stability was reduced by 10%. Now the best settings we found is the lowest settings possible with motion blur turned on. The temp is 65 degrees Celsius and the GPU is just 75%, which is a stable status. Now let's try Honkai Impact 3. This also is a high graphic demanding game, and upon heading to the settings, we are in mid quality with 30 FPS in combat. This is the recommended settings, and upon testing this setting in game, our result is 29 FPS with 95% stability. We received drastic frame drops whenever we tried to cast ultimates. Still playable though in this type of settings, and if you really want stable, smoother gameplay, we suggest lowering the settings, then turn off the effects, and set the frames to 60 FPS. These settings will give you 55 FPS with 97% stability. It is smooth and frame drops are acceptable. Now, we tried to bump the settings to the max to see the capability, and surprisingly, we get 45 FPS in average with 95% stability. This type of settings will make you think if you will go for stable but fewer details or acceptable frames with more details. Last update on our battery, 3 hours of screen time, the battery is still above the half of its capacity. For us, this is a solid battery life if you think that it has 90Hz and in performance mode. So for the battery results, here is our battery test, including endurance tests, heavy usage with performance mode enabled, and charging with 18 watt power brick. Overall, even though it can't play high settings in PUBG and other high graphic games, you can play smoothly in recommended and lowest possible settings with no lags and frame drop. And since it has an 8 gigs of RAM, you can easily multitask or stream on this device. This means that this is not only for gaming but an overall day-to-day device. If you want to know why, read our full review about what are the other aspects of this phone aside from gaming, links in the description box below. With that being said, the price of Realme 7i is 11,990 pesos. If you are trying to look for an alternative, we suggest you take a look also at a phone that has the same price, which is the Realme 6. This phone is equipped with MediaTek Helio G90T, a gaming-centric chip, and is made for hardcore gaming. Though you will lose an extra 4 gigs of RAM and camera features, but regardless, Realme 7i is a great phone with a clean 90Hz smooth display with lots of capabilities, especially in camera and multitasking. And that's the gaming review of the Realme 7i. What are your thoughts? Share it with us in the comment section below. That's it, thank you for watching, subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified, and don't forget to visit manilashaker.com for more tech news, reviews, and comparison of the latest device. This is Aishadel and mabuhay, Manila!